You have had a toothache before, that specific deep throbbing pain that sits behind your jaw and refuses to leave. You know exactly what you did. You picked up your phone, you booked an appointment. You sat in a clean white room while someone with a degree and a drill fixed the problem in 45 minutes. Now imagine that exact same pain, same throb, same jaw, same desperate need for it to stop. But there is no phone. There is no appointment. There is no clean white room. There is no drill. There is no one with a degree. There is just you, the pain, and whatever the world around you had to offer. For 300,000 years, that was the only option every human being on Earth had. And the question is, what did they actually do? The first thing to understand is that ancient humans had terrible teeth. Not because they were lazy or did not care, because of what they ate. Hunter-gatherer diets were full of grit. Dust and sand got into everything. Every piece of meat, every root, every seed had to be ground between the teeth with no protection. Archaeologists who study ancient skulls consistently find one thing. The teeth are worn almost completely flat, not decayed in the way modern teeth decay. Worn down to the root from a lifetime of grinding, gritty food against enamel that was never designed for it. By the time an ancient human was 30 years old, their teeth looked like the teeth of someone twice that age today. The pain started early, and it never really stopped. But here's what surprises researchers most. Ancient humans also had cavities. Not from sugar, from something nobody expected. When ancient humans began cooking with fire and eating more starchy foods, the bacteria in their mouths changed. Specific bacteria that feed on starch began to dominate. And those bacteria produce acid, and acid destroys enamel. Archaeological evidence shows cavities in human teeth going back at least 10,000 years. Some skulls from ancient North Africa show cavities in more than half of all surviving teeth. So the pain was real. The damage was real. The question remains, what did they do about it? The answer is that they did something. And some of what they did actually worked. The most common solution across nearly every ancient culture on every continent was plants. Specifically, the cloves. Cloves contain a compound called eugenol. Eugenol is a natural anesthetic. It numbs nerve tissue on contact. It reduces inflammation. It has genuine, measurable, pain-killing properties. And it is still used in dentistry today. When a dentist fills a cavity, the material they pack around the tooth to protect the nerve often contains eugenol derived from cloves. Ancient humans in Asia were chewing cloves for toothache relief thousands of years before anyone understood why it worked. They did not know about eugenol. They did not know about nerve tissue. They just knew that chewing cloves made the pain smaller. Willow bark appears again. The same bark that contained salicylic acid, the compound in aspirin, was used across ancient Europe for tooth pain. Ground into a paste and pressed against the painful tooth, it reduced inflammation and dulled the nerve response. Garlic was used in ancient Egypt and ancient China independently. Pressed against the gum line beside a painful tooth, it released allicin, a compound with measurable antimicrobial properties that fights the bacteria causing the infection. Ancient Egyptians also mixed ground barley, coriander, and various plant compounds into a paste that they pressed against painful teeth. A recipe for this paste was found written on papyrus going back over 3,000 years. A written prescription for toothache relief from people with no concept of germ theory, who somehow identified the right plants by trial and error across thousands of generations. But not every solution was gentle. Some ancient cultures used heat. A heated stick or small coal pressed near the tooth to cauterize the nerve. This was not pain relief. This was pain replacement. A different and more immediate agony to override the original one. Some ancient cultures used extraction, not with tools, with fingers or with a thin, sharp bone used as a lever. Archaeological evidence of ancient tooth extraction exists going back thousands of years. Skulls with teeth clearly removed during life. Not after death, during life, which means someone was performing primitive dentistry tens of thousands of years before the first dental school opened. And the person receiving that extraction had to decide that the ongoing pain of the toothache was worse than the immediate terror of having a tooth levered out of their jaw with a bone. Think about that decision for a moment. There is evidence of a more sophisticated procedure going back 9,000 years. In a site in Pakistan called Mehrgarh, archaeologists found human molars with small, perfectly round holes drilled into them. Not from decay. Drilled. The holes were too precise and too perfectly circular to be anything else. Using a small, flint-tipped bow drill on a living patient, with no anesthetic beyond whatever plant remedies they had available. 9,000 years ago, someone sat down, opened their mouth, and allowed another person to drill into their tooth with a piece of flint, and then got up and went about their day. The teeth with drilled holes show no signs of the patient dying shortly after. They show wear patterns that indicate the person continued using that tooth for years. They survived, they recovered, they kept eating. But here's the part of this story that connects directly to you. The bacteria that cause tooth decay today are not the same bacteria that dominated ancient human mouths before agriculture. Before humans began farming and eating large quantities of starch and sugar, the bacterial ecosystem of the human mouth was more diverse. More balanced, the specific decay-causing bacteria were present but not dominant. Agriculture changed that. Farming meant more starch. More starch meant more food for the specific bacteria that cause cavities. Those bacteria multiplied and crowded out the more diverse, ancient bacterial community. Within a few thousand years of widespread agriculture, the rates of tooth decay in human populations jumped dramatically. Not because humans stopped caring about their teeth, because humans changed what they ate, and their mouths changed with it. Which means the toothache epidemic was not ancient, it was created by us, by the food system we built, by the shift from hunting and gathering to farming that fed billions of people, but quietly transformed the ecosystem inside every human mouth on Earth. Ancient hunter-gatherers with their worn, flat, ground-down teeth had far fewer cavities than the farming populations that came after them. They suffered differently, but they suffered less from this specific pain. And when they did suffer from it, they reached for cloves and willow bark and garlic, and sometimes for a sharp piece of flint. And they sat with someone who knew what they were doing, and they opened their mouths, and they trusted the person across from them, and they got through it, the same way you do.